Well, the championship run-in begins this weekend, and if Easter Monday is anything to go by, then silly season is here, as it gets unpredictable towards the final stages. Battles at the top for the playoffs and for relegation all went a little bit crazy when it came to Monday's fixtures. We're going to have a quick recap of those in a minute before moving on to matchday 41, which takes place across Friday night and Saturday afternoon. It's the start of another three-game week, the final three-game week for most sides in a championship season. So as always, if you want the chance to be a hero or look as silly as most of us did on Monday, then please do get your comments down below with your score predictions for matchday 41 this weekend. If you beat or match my overall score, you'll get a shout out in the recap on Sunday as we look ahead to the final full midweek fixture list of the championship season. But for now, before we look ahead to this weekend's action, let's have a look back at a pretty difficult Easter Monday because, as you can see from the slide here, going into the 5:30 p.m. kickoff, I had 0 points for the first time this season. Going into stoppage time in Ipswich, Southampton, I still had 0 points. Thankfully, Ipswich got that late winner, the scoreline never in doubt, and I also picked up another point for Leeds win, although that was in doubt at times as well. 4 points overall for me. And remarkably, just to show how bonkers Monday's results were, I'm in the top third of all the commenters. I take 9th place out of the 27 of you that took part. Thank you to everyone who got involved again. Let's have a quick look though at the 8 who did beat my score, because a few of you deserve a special mention. Swifty, 5 points for you. You pipped me by 1. Chris and Peter level on 6. And as always, this week was the value of perfect scores. I think I've got this right. Nobody got more than 5 outcomes correct in the whole match day. And that just shows you how bonkers it was. But 2 of you picked up 8 points, Mello and RZL. And then 3 joint leaders on 9. 1 of you picked up 3 perfect scores and nothing else. But Bobby, Teo and Ojo joined top of the table. 9 points on a match day with results like that is an incredible effort. No one's touching double figures on weeks like that. But well done to everyone for taking part. Get involved in the comments again. Hopefully this weekend will be a bit more predictable. But we start on Friday night with something that's very unpredictable because it is Rotherham United v, at the time of recording, managerless Plymouth Argyle. And if that doesn't make it difficult enough, Rotherham actually won a game on Monday. They beat Millwall by 2-1. Looked like it had fallen away when they were pegged back with 10 to go, but Charlie White pops up with a crucial winner. It was a game in which Rotherham were second best. There were lots of good chances, to be fair. But Millwall, I think by the clear-cut chances, had 5, and some of the ones they missed, blimey. They should have won the game quite comfortably. It's probably the best attacking display Millwall have had since Neil Harris returned, but defensively, a little bit naive compared to normal. On the flip side of that, Plymouth Argyle have sacked Ian Foster. They continued their dismal run both in front of goal and in terms of results overall with a 1-0 home defeat to Bristol City. A late red card is going to be problematic for the weekend as well. And I say the same as I've said for a while under Foster. The fact that their goal threat has dried up so much at home is frightening in such a short space of time. This weekend, I wonder who's going to be in charge. At the time of recording, there's no one. A few links, it might be Neil Warnock. But even if not, the football they were playing under the interim before Ian Foster came in, yes, a lot of draws, yes, poor defensively, but a lot more exciting. And a few draws might be enough now. You just don't know. So for this game, I'm going to go for the new manager bounce, or at least the Ian Foster leaving bounce. Rotherham winning 2 in a row seems improbable. They've delayed their relegation a week, but obviously it's going to happen. I'm going to go for Plymouth to confirm their relegation by extending the gap from 18 points to 21 with a 2-1 win away at Rotherham United on Friday night. The goals will flow under the interim, or if a new manager comes in under them. Let's move on to Saturday afternoon, and we start with a very crucial East Anglian derby. It is 6 v top. It is Norwich City versus Ipswich Town. Norwich beaten at Leicester after a good run of fixtures, but at home they've been very strong in recent weeks and months. Of course, after taking a lead at Leicester, it did all go a little bit wrong. And it wasn't the greatest performance. They were second best for most of the game. For Ipswich, it was anything but comfortable, but again, we talk about the effort late on. We talk about the character and the fight. And yet again, just as we saw a few weeks earlier with the Bristol City game, they go to the end, they find a way. And Sarmiento in the 97th minute, really composed finish actually, and much better than it looked, But a really good comeback victory because Southampton the first half largely played them off the park, it's got to be said. Not even just the possession, but creating chances too. I think if you look at the clear-cut stats, it should have been 4-0 to Southampton. They had a couple of glorious chances missed, but that won't bother Ipswich now. They're doing enough at the moment. And with 6 games to go, to be at the summit, it's an incredible effort for a side that were in League One last year. For this game, though, there's going to be that extra bit of needle. Of course, it was the thrilling 2-2 draw in a reverse fixture. Can Norwich spoil the promotion party again? From a neutral point of view, with the football they play, I think it'd be great to see Ipswich come up. But equally, I predicted Norwich to get promoted pre-season, so have I got to stick with them to make the playoffs? I think Norwich at home are going to be strong. We've seen Ipswich have struggled at times on the road. The Cardiff game was a good example of that. I'm going to go, I've got a feeling there's every chance this could be a draw, but I've got a few of them later on. So I'm going to go for Norwich to nick this one by 2-1. I really don't mind what the score is. I've got a bit of a soft spot for both teams the way they're playing this season. But I'm going to go for Norwich just to win it at home. 2-1. Ipswich have ground out results and they may do so again. I just wonder what the derby's going to throw up. Could it be decided by a red card? We'll wait and see. Let's move on to the 10:03 p.m. kickoffs, starting with Blackburn Rovers v Southampton. It seems that no one somehow predicted the 5-1 Blackburn win at Sunderland for a side that hadn't scored more than one in a game for some time. A 5-1 victory that was just remarkable. It wasn't just the result as well, it was the fact that they were so ruthless. 5 goals from 7 shots on target. You look at the stats and actually think it was a quite even game, but the chances Blackburn created were wonderful. Sunderland were awful, and they're probably not going to come up against as weak a team when they play Southampton, who will be heartbroken by what happened at Ipswich. If we're being honest, it might just rule them out of the automatic promotion race, but I still think there's a little bit of legs in it yet. They've still got Leeds and Leicester to play, but they've got to win games like this. It's going to be a tense one because Blackburn are going to play like the away team. John Eustace will sit behind the ball. He'll try and make sure that they're cagey and tight and very hard to break down. We know Southampton will have 70-80% of the ball, but can they create those clear-cut chances? And then when they get there, can they take them? Because that was the problem against Ipswich. They sort of had a better time against Ipswich, who played into their hands a little bit because they were being aggressive. They were being front-footed. The Blackburn game is one they've found harder because you saw at home earlier in the season some of those games where teams sit behind the ball. We saw Millwall in recent weeks, didn't we? It becomes tricky. I've got a feeling it could be frustrating because Southampton are going to almost have to play like the home team. Blackburn will sit there. They'll have added confidence now. I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline. It might not be a wise decision, but after Monday afternoon, who knows what to predict? I'm going for 1 apiece. As we move on to another game that's pretty unpredictable, it is Cardiff City versus Hull City. Now 11th v 10th with just 2 points separating them. And are Cardiff just about back in the playoff race? A big 2-1 win at Coventry really helped out. 2 own goals, which was pretty remarkable. They didn't have to score themselves, but they did play pretty solidly, restricted Coventry to largely shots from distance and from set pieces. But ultimately, they didn't look like they had the goal threat to score the goals, but that job was done for them. So for Cardiff, a really good win. Was important after their recent run that they bounced back. 2 blanks against Sunderland and, of course, in the derby prior. Hull now, though, no win in their last 6 and 4 draws followed up by 2 defeats. They'll be so upset by the Leeds game because, yes, against Stoke, they were awful on Friday, but they played really well at Leeds. And in truth, going into the last 10 minutes, it looked like it was going to be a stalemate and a draw and a decent result. But late on, Leeds stole the show. Of course, the penalty, such a naive challenge. There was no need for it either. And then, of course, in the last minute with the keeper going up, it's one of those situations. Good finish from Dan James, though. For Hull, this is a must-win game. And, of course, if Norwich win the early kickoff, as I've weirdly predicted, then they're definitely going to have to win to stay in the race. And that's going to make this one difficult. Cardiff will be fairly disciplined, fairly solid. They don't often concede many goals at home. That Sunderland game aside. We saw against Ipswich and Huddersfield how solid they can be. And for Hull, that defensive record's just drying up, albeit they've played Leeds and Leicester in the last 3. I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline again. Hull have drawn a lot of games in this race, and I think they'll just fall short as a result. A very good season, and definitely signs that they've got an identity, that they're playing the right way. But it's just not quite there yet. Big progress from last season, but a 1-1 draw here. As we move on to the current second place side and another team that are fighting for the playoffs, it is Coventry City versus Leeds United. Coventry stunned at home to Cardiff by 2 own goals, despite the fact they took the lead and were looking good for it early doors. Should have scored one more as well, and that would have given them a point. But it feels like it was just one of those days. Of course, they've got a couple more games than others because of the catch-up from the FA Cup, and they'll have another fixture where it's delayed as well. But Leeds United are the informed team in the Championship, still unbeaten this year. Their second half record in games is ridiculous this year. In their last 15 games, now 17 scored, none against in the second half. Coventry have got to be leading at the break, but they're normally a second half team as well, this game aside. So I think more of the action might come later in the day here. Don't worry if you turn up 5 minutes late. I'm going to go, I think Leeds just nick it. I really want Coventry to get in the playoffs because I said their fans were great with us last year in the final, but I have to go for Leeds. I just feel like they're going to nick the title. They're the unstoppable train at the minute, and they're finding a way to get results. A draw at the very worst for them. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Leeds United. As we move on to a big game at the other end of the table between Huddersfield Town and Millwall. Huddersfield got a crucial point away at Stoke City, albeit they threw away a lead yet again. It wasn't the greatest of performances, and we're not seeing the manager play the way that we used to see, and certainly with his Paderborn days in the past that I used to adore. But Stoke were good against them. They probably should have won. But Huddersfield ground out a point which might not be the worst result in the world now, because if they beat Millwall on Saturday, they can go within 1 point of them, because Millwall lost at Rotherham, which nobody saw coming. They did have 5 clear-cut chances. They missed some unbelievable ones. And on any other day, I think they would have won it. Probably the best chances they've created since Neil Harris came back. And somehow it's a game they didn't win. So it is just starting to dwindle after that early bounce from Neil Harris's side. But these are two sides that in the last 3 or 4 out of form. Huddersfield didn't beat Rotherham either. They've not won any of their last 6. A few draws in there, but largely at home they've struggled a bit more. We saw against West Brom and Coventry. They are very susceptible to the counter. I'm not sure that's the way Millwall are going to play. I think this could be quite a low-scoring game. I think it could be decided by a set-piece either way. I have no idea which way it will go because Sorba Thomas has great set-piece delivery. Millwall have taken advantage of set-pieces brilliantly since Neil Harris has come back in. You know what? I'm going to go for Millwall to nick it. I think that Rotherham game was a blip. I think if they get this result, they're probably safe if they get to 47. They have managed to pick up points. I can see a lot of you in the comments going for 0-0 or 1-1. I'm sure of it. But I'm going to go for a winner here. I'll take a gamble on Millwall by 1-0 at Huddersfield. Into the second half, and it is third place Leicester City versus Birmingham City, who are now still in trouble, but 3 points better off. A big win at home to Preston on Easter Monday. Jay Stansfield again getting a goal to take them 2 points clear of the relegation zone. Birmingham were the better side in that game, and actually they had chances to win it by more. They restricted Preston to next to nothing, and actually it's the closest they've looked to a John Eustace side probably since John Eustace left. Maybe that Birmingham Sunderland game under Mowbray aside, but a really decent performance, solid and compact, which is what they need at this stage. And their home form, as we've seen throughout the season, is going to be crucial. They'd put in a couple of half-decent displays in those 1-0 home defeats. Could have been draws on other days, but for now, they've got to find a way. But away at Leicester, given their away form and Leicester's home form is not ideal, is it? Leicester came back to win 3-1 at home to Norwich and keep the pressure on the top 2 with that game in hand, albeit that game is against Southampton. And when you look at the losses they've posted this year, we talked about it a bit last week. If they don't go up this year, they're in big trouble next season. So for Leicester, it becomes a case of needing to go up rather than wanting to go up. They've got a chance, they've got to stay in the mix, and this is the sort of game where they can't really slip up. We've seen a few teams with some horrendous results. All of the playoff chasers lost or drew on Monday. But I'm going to go for Leicester to do their job and win this comfortably. Birmingham will sit back and play for a draw, and nobody can blame them for doing so. But on this occasion, I'm going to go for Leicester City to win. I'm going to go regulation by 2-0. As we move on to another side who might be back in the playoff race, it is Middlesbrough versus Swansea City. Middlesbrough with a good draw against Southampton, followed by a 2-0 victory at home to Sheffield Wednesday. Did the job comfortably, albeit an own goal started it. And again, the only criticism of Middlesbrough is the amount of chances they created and the quality of positions they got into. They really should have had more than 2. And that's been the only thing this season. That ruthless edge hasn't been there. They've lost the creativity on the left of Giles. They've lost the likes of Archer and Akpom for goals. Of course, it wasn't quite going to be the same, but they're only 6 points off now with 6 games to go, and you never know with the running they've got. At home to Swansea, you would probably expect them to pick up a result. Swansea probably just about safe, but were beaten at home to QPR. Steve Cook turning up with a good finish in the box this time. In truth, it was an even game. A draw would have been a fair result, but Swansea didn't do an awful lot with the possession they had. In the end, again towards the end, were restricted to half chances and long distance efforts, but they did have a couple of opportunities to score and probably should have got the draw out of it. Does make this one quite difficult because Swansea are very inconsistent. They have picked up a couple of big home wins recently, but on the road, they've either drawn or lost narrowly. Middlesbrough at home, again, don't often lose in recent weeks, but either get frustrated or end up with a narrow victory. They're very good at the back, 4 clean sheets in the last 6. I'm going to go for Borough to win it. I think it's going to be tight. I think there will be a goal apiece. I'm going to go for Middlesbrough to get a late winner. 2-1 to Middlesbrough and keep their playoff chances alive. Let's move on to a big game at the bottom, or is it now, for QPR against Sheffield Wednesday. QPR go 6 points clear of the bottom 3. What a job Marty Cifuentes has done. Back-to-back wins over the Easter period, largely due to sublime finishing from their centre-halves. It was Jimmy Dunn late on against Birmingham, and then Steve Cook made it 2-2 with a lovely finish against Swansea in the box. That gave them the 3 points and put them up to 46, just one behind Swansea, who they beat. And now 7 points clear of Sheffield Wednesday, where it becomes a crucial spell because they've played away at Borough and Ipswich, they've played Leeds at home. Swansea, they got a point, they were a little unfortunate. But prior to that, they were playing sides in and around them, and they were winning. Now against QPR, they're pretty much out of danger now. Are we going to see a slightly more lax performance? That's the question. You could argue the same for them though. They struggled with West Brom and Borough, albeit they were unfortunate not to beat the Baggies, and then they've won 2 in a row against sides in and around them. I mean, this has the hallmarks of a draw, but I just feel QPR will think the job's done now. Maybe they step off a little. It's the end of a tough week. It's been a big battle in effort, and Sheffield Wednesday have to win. They've not picked up enough draws this season, which is probably the reason they're in the relegation zone. They lose so many games, but they either lose or win. So it takes away my prediction of a Championship's favourite scoreline. And I'm going to take off the QPR goal. Look, they're relying on goals from centre-halves and good goals as well. Before that, they'd had 2 blanks in a row. And I'm going to go for them to have a blank here. I'm going for Sheffield Wednesday by 1-0. And if they don't win this one, we might have to start suggesting that they're favourites for relegation again. A side that maybe isn't anymore, though, is Stoke City, who host West Bromwich Albion on Saturday. Frustration against Huddersfield after a good display, but it is another point on the board. In their last 6 games, 10 points picked up. And of course, the crucial thing, we're getting a draw against Huddersfield. They don't get any closer. 5 points the gap now. And it was actually a pretty good display. They probably should have won it. Missed another gilt-edged chance as well. But overall, Stoke are playing well at the moment. And I have said that for a while under Schumacher. Bar 1 or 2 stinkers against largely the top sides. They produce good performances and you can see an identity. It's just whether Stoke can produce that long term and whether he can get in players that will actually be able to consistently produce over the season next year. I've got no doubt they'll stay up now. For West Brom, a bit of a disappointment against Watford, I guess. From the position they were in with 20 to go, 2-2 is a fabulous result. But it wasn't the best performance. It wasn't a great result. But I guess given what happened below them, it's ended up being pretty good because they've now got an 8-point gap to the playoffs. Most of the sides below them lost. Norwich, Coventry, Preston, all defeated. So a point in the end, as we've seen with Corberán all year, just keeps putting points on the board, keeps the unbeaten run going. And these are 2 teams actually in pretty good form by recent Championship standards. So you wouldn't be criticised probably for going for a draw in this game. I could certainly make a case for the Championship's favourite scoreline. But when Stoke have played against the top sides under Schumacher, they have given up a few chances. We saw when he was Plymouth manager, they quite often were a little bit leaky at the back when they tried to take the game to teams. But this game's a bit of a free hit for them. It's not the one that's going to define their season. They've got themselves away a little bit, so I think they can take the chance. I think it might just cost them. I'm going to go for West Brom by 2-1. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if it's a draw here. There's so many that are so difficult to call this weekend. You probably get the best score this match day if you just go for 1 or win every game. There's my prediction for the weekend. 2 games to go, and we start with Sunderland versus Bristol City. It was the Stadium of Fright on Monday afternoon, I'm afraid. Sunderland 1, Blackburn 5. A pretty even game statistically, but defensively, Sunderland were awful. The way they gave up goals and chances was just embarrassing, and They need the end of the season to come now. I know a few had mentioned it on forums and social media, but what's happened to them since Tony Mowbray's gone is crazy. And it's another case for ownerships of be careful what you wish for. As we saw earlier in the season with Birmingham, we're now seeing with Sunderland. The grass ain't always greener, and they look a shadow of the side they did from last year and even earlier on this season. On the flip side of that, Bristol City, let me whisper it quietly, might be becoming consistent. 3 1-0 wins in the last 4 games against Leicester, Plymouth and Swansea. Plymouth last time out was a decent win. A late red card helped make it comfortable, but they were the better side. They deserved to win it. And again, Liam Manning just starting to impose his style on the side. They're not keeping possession as much as some of his other teams have, but they've got a real threat from wide areas. They're incredibly disciplined without the ball, which is something we do see from his teams at their best. They're into the top half, but the playoffs too far away. And it's so hard to predict their inconsistency. Given what happened on Monday for both Sunderland and Bristol City's recent form, I'm going to go for Bristol City to win because Sunderland haven't won a home game in ages. But I know that Bristol City will just throw one in because they're the worst team to predict in the league. I'm going to go for Bristol City by 2-1, but in truth, this could be any scoreline. A mid-table clash, 2 teams with nothing to play for. Who knows what's going to happen, quite frankly. And the final game is another mid-table side as Watford host Preston North End. Preston still chasing the playoffs, but it was one of those performances on Monday at Birmingham. 1 shot on target, created next to nothing. And against the Birmingham side that has been fairly open prior to Gary Rowett's game in charge. It isn't a great look, is it? Let's be honest. If you want to chase the playoffs and you want to make it, you've got to do better than that. In truth, Birmingham could have had a second or third. They had a couple of great opportunities. And Preston didn't look like scoring if they'd been there all day. And we've always said this season, Preston don't often dominate matches. And that is always going to be the thing that might just make them miss out. So they've run close. They've had a good season, but this one's going to be tricky. Watford, I've got to say, I was impressed with the Leeds game under Cleverley. Similarly at West Brom, they did create chances. They did look a threat going forwards, but they are now a bit more open defensively than perhaps they were under Valerian Ismail. So it's quite hard to predict this. And at home to a side like Preston, they're not going to get those spaces in behind, which Leeds offered when they go flying forward. West Brom the same at the Hawthorns. So I think it will be harder for Watford to break teams down. And we've seen earlier in the season, they've struggled for goals a lot. It could end up being one of those bonkers games, but I don't think it will. I'm going to go for Preston to get back to winning ways just. I was very tempted to go 0-0. I've gone low scoring all match day. So for the 3rd time in this match day 41, I'm going for a 1-0 away win. With that out of the way though, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for in match day 41. And after getting sucker punched in on Easter Monday, I've played pretty safe with the scorelines. No teams to score more than 2. This match day seems really difficult to predict. Bar maybe Leicester at home to Birmingham. There's not many bankers anywhere. There's a lot of games that you could call a draw. Is someone brave enough in the comments to just go for 1 all 12 times? Because I've got a sneaky suspicion you might win the match day if you do. But I've gone for a big win for Leicester at the top. A big win for Leeds as well. But a frustrating 1 all draw for Southampton, which will definitely end their top 2 chances. And I've also gone for Norwich to beat Ipswich in the East Anglian derby. Managerless Plymouth to pick up a win as well, but those are just my predictions for Friday and Saturday. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below and give me your predictions for match day 41. If you beat or match my overall score, you'll get a shout out in the next recap, which will be on Sunday, looking ahead to the midweek action. We've got a full fixture list then. We've got loads of Premier League action to come as well, so keep your eyes peeled for all of that stuff over the next week or two. It's going to be a big run-in. I'm at a game on Tuesday night in EFL, which is big at both ends of the League 2 table. So there is loads of content to look forward to. If you enjoyed this one, put a thumbs up on it. If you want to make sure you don't miss any of that, subscribe and turn the notification bell on. Thank you so much for your continued support throughout the season. It really is greatly appreciated. And we'll see you back here on Sunday for more Championship predictions. But before that, on Friday with our weekend Premier League preview. I'll see you there.